Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach when your adult child calls, knowing they're probably going to ask for money again? Or maybe you've canceled your own plans countless times because your daughter needs you to watch the grandkids at the last minute. Perhaps you've noticed how your son only seems to visit when he wants something, leaving you feeling used rather than loved. If you're nodding your head right now, you're not alone. I hear from seniors every single day who are struggling with this exact problem. Adult children who have crossed the line from asking for help to taking advantage. And what makes it even more painful is that deep down, you love them so much that you keep saying yes, even when you know you should say no. Today, we're going to talk about something that many people find difficult to admit. When the children you raised and sacrificed for are now taking advantage of your kindness, your resources, and your time. But more importantly, we're going to cover 6 practical, effective strategies that will help you regain your self-respect, restore healthy boundaries, and actually improve your relationship with your adult children in the process. Now, before we dive in, I want to make something absolutely clear. Setting boundaries with your adult children doesn't mean you don't love them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop enabling behaviors that aren't serving them, or you. Well, remember, you raised them to be independent, capable adults. By allowing them to take advantage of you, you're actually preventing them from fully stepping into that role. So let's talk about the first strategy that can help you regain respect and peace of mind when dealing with adult children who may be taking advantage. Strategy number 1, recognize the patterns of manipulation. The first step to addressing any problem is recognizing it exists. Many seniors I work with don't initially realize they're being manipulated because the tactics their children use are subtle and often wrapped in layers of guilt or emotional appeals. Let me share a story about Margaret, a 72-year-old widow who came to one of my workshops last year. Margaret's daughter would call her nearly every week with some kind of financial emergency. The car needed repairs, the rent was late, or the grandkids needed new clothes for school. Margaret, wanting to be helpful, would send money each time, often dipping into her own limited retirement savings to do so. What Margaret didn't realize until we talked it through was that these emergencies followed a pattern. They always happened right after her daughter received her paycheck, which was likely being spent elsewhere. And whenever Margaret hesitated or suggested her daughter try to budget better, she'd hear things like, "I guess you don't care if your grandchildren have to go to school in worn-out shoes," or, "If Dad was still alive, he would help without," making me feel bad about it. These are classic manipulation tactics, using guilt, playing on your emotions, invoking the memory of a deceased spouse, or using grandchildren as leverage. Other common patterns include only contacting you when they need something, making you feel like you're a bad parent if you don't comply, creating artificial emergencies that always require immediate financial help, showing excessive gratitude and affection when you give them what they want, then becoming distant afterward, comparing you unfavorably to others. My friend's mom helps her out all the time, making promises they don't keep. "I'll pay you back next month," but next month never comes. The key is to start keeping track of these patterns. You might even want to keep a small notebook where you jot down when your adult child contacts you, what they asked for, and how you felt afterward. After a few weeks, patterns will emerge that can help you clearly see if you're being taken advantage of. And here's something important. Recognizing these patterns isn't about vilifying your child. It's about understanding the dynamic so you can change it. Most adult children don't set out to manipulate their parents deliberately. These patterns often develop gradually over time and become habitual for both parties. Strategy number 2. Start with small boundaries and clear communication. Once you've recognized the patterns, the next step is to start establishing boundaries. Now, I know the word boundaries can sound harsh or confrontational, but they don't have to be. Think of boundaries as simply defining what is and isn't okay with you. Many seniors tell me they're afraid to set boundaries because they don't want to damage their relationship with their child, or lose access to their grandchildren. That's why I recommend starting small and using clear, loving communication. Let me tell you about Robert, an 80-year-old gentleman who was constantly being asked to babysit his grandchildren with little to no notice. His daughter would call and say, "Dad, I need you to watch the kids in an hour," assuming he had nothing better to do. Robert loved his grandchildren but had his own life, friends, and activities. He also found that watching energetic young children for 8 to 10 hours was physically exhausting at his age. Instead of continuing to cancel his own plans or exhausting himself, Robert decided to set a simple boundary. The next time his daughter called with a last-minute request, he calmly said, "I'd love to see the grandkids, but I need at least 3 days' notice to plan around my schedule. If you let me know by Monday, I'd be happy to watch them on Thursday." His daughter was surprised at first. She had grown accustomed to her father always being available. But when Robert remained firm and consistent, she began to respect this boundary. Now they have a system where she checks with him well in advance, and Robert has time to prepare physically and mentally for his grandchildren's visits, making the time they spend together more enjoyable for everyone. The key elements that made Robert's boundary setting successful were: he was clear about what he needed. He offered an alternative that still allowed him to help, watching the kids with proper notice. He remained firm but kind in his delivery. He was consistent in enforcing the boundary. When setting your own boundaries, remember to use I statements rather than accusatory you statements. For example, instead of saying, "You always expect me to drop everything when you call," try, "I feel overwhelmed when I'm asked to change my plans at the last minute. I need more advance notice." This approach focuses on your needs rather than their behavior, which is less likely to put them on the defensive. Remember, the goal isn't to create conflict. It's to establish a healthier relationship dynamic that respects both your needs and theirs. As we continue, I'll share 4 more powerful strategies that will help you regain respect and establish healthy boundaries with adult children who may be taking advantage of your generosity and good nature. These practical approaches have helped thousands of seniors just like you restore balance to their family relationships while protecting their financial security and emotional well-being. Now that we've talked about recognizing manipulation patterns and starting with small boundaries, let's continue with our third strategy, which many seniors find particularly challenging but incredibly effective. Strategy number 3. Learn to say no. Without guilt, for many of us who grew up in a generation where family always came first, saying no to our children can feel almost impossible. We were taught that good parents sacrifice everything for their children. While that mindset served an important purpose when raising young children, it can become problematic when those children are adults who should be standing on their own 2 feet. I remember working with Harold, a 75-year-old retired teacher who had co-signed 3 loans for his son over the years. His son had defaulted on all 3, leaving Harold to pay them off from his retirement savings. When his son approached him about co-signing a 4th loan for a new car, Harold knew he should say no, but the thought filled him with intense guilt and anxiety. What if he loses his job because he can't drive to work? Harold worried. What if he thinks I don't love him anymore? What if he gets angry and stops bringing my grandchildren around? These fears kept Harold trapped in a cycle of financial support that was rapidly depleting his retirement security. Together, we worked on a simple but powerful technique I call the pause and reflect method for saying no without guilt. When his son asked about the car loan, instead of immediately responding, Harold said, "I need to think about that and check my finances. I'll get back to you tomorrow." This gave Harold time to reflect on whether this request was reasonable and whether he truly wanted to say yes. During this reflection time, I encouraged Harold to ask himself these 3 questions. If I say yes to this request, what am I saying no to in my own life?
For Harold, saying yes to another loan meant saying no to his own financial security and possibly his ability to remain independent as he aged. What would I advise my best friend to do in this situation? This question helps create emotional
distance and often leads to more objective thinking. Is my help truly helping, or is it enabling? This is perhaps the most important question of all. Harold realized that by repeatedly rescuing his son from financial consequences, he was actually preventing him from developing financial responsibility. The next day, Harold called his son and calmly said, "I've given this a lot of thought and I'm not able to co-sign another loan. I care about you deeply, but I need to protect my retirement savings at this stage of my life." His son was initially upset and tried several tactics to change Harold's mind, including suggesting that Harold didn't care about him. But Harold was prepared for this reaction and remained firm while still expressing his love. He said, "I understand. You're disappointed. I do love you very much, and I believe in your ability to find another solution to this problem." What happened next surprised Harold. After a few days of minimal contact, his son called to say he'd found a cheaper used car he could afford without a cosigner. This was a crucial moment of growth for both of them. His son took responsibility for his own needs, and Harold discovered that saying no didn't destroy their relationship. The key to saying no without guilt is remembering that you're not rejecting your child. You're simply declining a specific request. Your love and emotional support remain constant, even when your financial or practical support has limits. Strategy number 4. Establish financial boundaries with clarity and consistency. Money is often at the heart of many situations where adult children take advantage of their parents. Whether it's loans that never get repaid, expectations of inheritance, or pressure to fund grandchildren's education at the expense of your own financial security, money matters can quickly become complicated. I worked with a couple, John and David, both in their late 60s, who were struggling with their daughter's constant financial demands. What started as occasional help with bills had escalated to regular requests for substantial amounts of money. Their daughter would often say things like, "You're not using that money anyway," or "You'll be gone someday and I'll inherit it, so why not help me now when I need it?" These kinds of statements are particularly manipulative because they devalue your own needs and remaining years. They suggest that your resources are somehow already their property, which is simply not true. Jean and David decided to establish clear financial boundaries using what I call the financial clarity conversation. They invited their daughter over for dinner and had a prepared, thoughtful discussion about their financial situation. They explained that while they had saved carefully for retirement, their resources were finite and needed to last potentially 20-30 more years, including possible long-term care needs. They then clearly outlined what they were willing and able to do financially. In their case, they decided they could provide gifts at birthdays and holidays, help with their grandchildren's education through a specific monthly contribution to a college fund, and assist in true emergencies, which they defined as unexpected, medical bills or urgent home repairs, not cash flow problems or lifestyle desires. What made this approach work was that Jean and David were united in their decision and presented a unified front, had concrete numbers and a clear plan, not vague guidelines, distinguished between what they couldn't do versus what they wouldn't do, focused on their love and non-financial ways they wanted to support their daughter, remained consistent in enforcing these boundaries over time. The last point is crucial. Consistency is key when establishing any new boundaries. If you say no to a request for money one week, then give in the next time, because your child is persistent or makes you feel guilty, you're teaching them that boundaries are negotiable if they apply enough pressure. Jean and David's daughter was initially resistant to these new boundaries, but over time she came to respect them. She even admitted later that knowing exactly what her parents could help with and what they couldn't actually reduced tension in their relationship because expectations were clear on both sides. If you're struggling with financial boundaries, consider writing down your financial limitations and commitments before having a conversation with your adult child. This isn't about sharing your entire financial situation with them, but rather about being clear with yourself about what you can and cannot afford to give without compromising your own security. Remember, you worked hard for your retirement savings, and ensuring your own financial stability isn't selfish, it's responsible. The greatest financial gift you can give your children is not becoming financially dependent on them in your later years. Let's move on to our fifth strategy, which addresses another common area where many seniors find themselves being taken advantage of: cheat your valuable time and energy. Strategy 5. Value your time and energy as precious resources. As we get older, our time and energy become increasingly precious resources. Many adult children don't fully understand this and may make demands on your time without considering the physical or emotional toll it takes on you. I met Martha, a 78-year-old grandmother of 5, at one of my workshops. Martha's 3 adult children had fallen into a pattern of treating her as the family's default childcare provider, housekeeper, and errand runner. Between babysitting grandchildren, cooking meals for family gatherings, and being asked to help with everything from household chores to administrative tasks, Martha was exhausted. She'd recently been diagnosed with high blood pressure, which her doctor attributed partly to stress and overexertion. Yet whenever Martha tried to decline a request, her children would say things like, "But you're retired, you have all the time in the world," or "You always say you love spending time with the grandkids." These comments made Martha feel guilty for having her own needs and limitations. Together, we worked on a strategy I call the energy budget. Just as financial advisors recommend creating a monetary budget, I suggest creating an energy budget for your time and physical resources. Martha assessed how much energy she had on an average day and what activities were most important to her, which included her water aerobics class, book club, and some quiet time for reading and rest. Once she had clarity about her own needs and limitations, Martha had individual conversations with each of her children. She explained that while she cherished her role as grandmother and mother, she needed to prioritize her health and well-being. She offered specific times when she was available to help: Tuesday and Thursday mornings for babysitting her youngest grandchild, and Sunday afternoons for family dinner, which she would host once a month, not weekly as had become the expectation. Martha used a simple but powerful phrase that I recommend to all my clients: "I care about you deeply, and I also need to care for myself." This statement acknowledges both your love for your family and your own legitimate needs. The response was mixed at first. One child immediately understood and adjusted their expectations. Another was resistant and made comments about Martha changing or not being there for the family. The third initially agreed but continued to make last-minute requests for help. This is where consistency became essential. When faced with requests outside her established boundaries, Martha would gently but firmly say, "I wish I could help, but that doesn't work with my schedule. I'm available on Tuesday if that works for you." Over time, all 3 children adapted to these new boundaries. What's more, Martha found that her relationships with her children actually improved. She was less resentful when she did spend time with family, because it was on terms that respected her needs. And her children began to see her as a person with her own life and interests, not just as mom or grandma, whose sole purpose was to support them. One particularly helpful tool that Martha developed was what she called her yes list, a short list of requests she would almost always say yes to, because they aligned with her values and brought her joy. For her, this included reading bedtime, stories to her youngest grandchildren, attending school performances, and helping with truly important family events. Having this clarity helped her make quicker decisions about requests and feel more confident in her choices. This strategy of valuing your time and energy isn't about withdrawing from family life. It's about participating in a way that's sustainable and joyful rather than depleting. When you treat your time and energy as the precious resources they are, you model healthy self-care for your entire family, including your adult children. Now let's talk about our 6th and final strategy, which might be the most powerful of all. Strategy. Focus 6. Rebuild your own identity beyond parenthood. Many of the seniors I work with have devoted decades of their lives primarily to their roles as parents. Their identities, decisions, and daily activities revolved around their children for so long that when those children become adults, there's a void that can be difficult to fill. This void sometimes makes it easier for adult children to take advantage, because saying yes to their demands gives you a sense of still being needed and valuable. I remember working with Thomas, a 77-year-old widower whose sense of purpose had been deeply tied to helping his adult son and daughter. Whenever they called with a request, whether financial, practical, or emotional, Thomas would drop everything to be there for them. He felt a momentary sense of importance and value when they needed him, even though he was often left feeling drained and sometimes financially strained afterward. During our sessions, Thomas began to realize that his eagerness to help wasn't always about his children's needs. It was also about his own need to feel purposeful. Together, we worked on what I call identity expansion, finding new sources of meaning, connection, and purpose beyond his role as a father. Thomas had always been interested in local history, but had never had time to pursue this passion. He started volunteering at a historical society twice a week, where his knowledge and life experience were genuinely valued. He joined a men's discussion group at his community center, forming new friendships with peers who saw him as Thomas, the person, not just as someone's dad. He even took a community college course in local archaeology, something he'd been curious about for years. As Thomas's sense of identity expanded, something remarkable happened in his relationship with his adult children. He became less available for last-minute requests and less willing to overextend himself financially, but the time he did spend with his family became more meaningful. Rather than seeing him as a resource to be tapped, his children started to see him as a whole person with his own interests, skills, and life. What's more, his new activities gave him fresh things to talk about with his family. Instead of conversations revolving around their needs or problems, Thomas could share stories about his volunteer work or introduce his grandchildren to his newfound passion for local history. His relationship with his adult children gradually transformed from one of dependency to one of mutual respect and genuine interest. This strategy is about remembering that while being a parent was and is an important part of your identity, it's not your entire identity. You are a complete person with your own needs, interests, skills, and contributions to make to the world. Some practical ways to expand your identity beyond parenthood include revisiting old interests or hobbies that brought you joy before parenthood consumed your time. Learning something new. Studies show that learning novel skills is one of the best ways to keep your brain sharp as you age. Volunteering for causes you care about, where your wisdom and experience are valued. Building new friendships with people who know you as you are now, not just as someone's parent. Focusing on your physical and mental well-being through regular exercise, proper nutrition, and activities that bring you peace. As you rebuild and expand your identity, you'll find that your self-worth becomes less dependent on your adult children's needs for you. This creates a healthier dynamic where your relationship can be based on mutual love and respect rather than dependency and obligation. Now let's bring all 6 strategies together and talk about what you might expect as you implement them in your own life. When you first start setting boundaries with adult children who have grown accustomed to taking advantage of your generosity, you should be prepared for some resistance. This is normal and doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. In fact, pushback often means that your new boundaries are necessary and long overdue. Your adult children might try various tactics to get you to return to old patterns. Guilt trips, anger, emotional withdrawal, or even threats about limiting access to grandchildren. These reactions can be painful, but remember that they're usually temporary. Most adult children, given time and consistency, will adjust to new boundaries and even come to respect them. Dorothy, a gentle 83-year-old woman I worked with, faced fierce opposition when she first told her daughter she could no longer provide regular financial support. Her daughter didn't speak to her for nearly 3 weeks, the longest they'd gone without communication in decades. Dorothy was heartbroken and nearly gave in. But with support, she held firm in her boundary while continuing to express love in non-financial ways. After those difficult weeks, her daughter called and apologized. She admitted that she had become too dependent on her mother's help and wasn't managing her own finances responsibly. This became a turning point in their relationship, one that would never have happened if Dorothy had continued the unhealthy pattern. Remember that setting boundaries isn't about punishing your adult children or withdrawing your love. It's about creating a healthier relationship dynamic that respects everyone's needs, including yours. The goal isn't to distance yourself from your family, but to participate in family life in ways that are sustainable and authentic for you. As you implement these strategies, be gentle with yourself. Change takes time, and there may be moments when you slip back into old patterns. If that happens, don't berate yourself. Simply acknowledge it, reflect on what triggered the return to old behaviors, and recommit to your boundaries going forward. Also, don't underestimate the power of outside support during this process. Whether it's a trusted friend, a support group, for seniors, a spiritual advisor, or a professional counselor, having someone to talk to who understands your journey can make all the difference. Sometimes just hearing "you're doing the right thing" from someone you respect can give you the strength to maintain a difficult boundary. I've seen countless seniors transform their relationships with adult children who were taking advantage of them. These transformations rarely happen overnight, but with patience, consistency, and self-compassion, they do happen. The reward is a more balanced relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. And here's something many seniors don't expect. When you set healthy boundaries with adult children who have been taking advantage, you often end up with a closer, more authentic relationship in the long run. Without the undercurrent of resentment that comes from being used, you're free to enjoy each other's company and appreciate each other as the adults you both are. So let me leave you with this thought. The most loving gift you can give your adult children is not endless financial support or unlimited access to your time and energy. The most loving gift you can give them is the example of a person who knows their own worth, sets healthy boundaries, and lives with authenticity and self-respect. That's a legacy that will serve them far better than any material inheritance or exhausting sacrifice. I'd love to hear your experiences with setting boundaries with adult children. Have you found certain approaches that worked particularly well? Are there specific challenges you're facing? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your wisdom might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more content on living your best life in your golden years. Remember, it's never too late to create healthier relationships and reclaim your peace of mind. Thank you for watching, and remember, your needs matter, your time matters, your financial security matters, and setting boundaries that protect these things isn't selfish. It's an essential form of self-care that benefits everyone in your family in the long run. Until next time, take good care of yourself. You deserve it.